Look at the 19th century colonial prison system. You expect exactly this: physical exhaustion, endless lines of men chained to a treadmill. The mechanism that kept these men on the treadmills was a stack of 5 routine administrative circulars, printed and filed in 1886. These papers originate from the jail department of the Northwestern Provinces and Ode, issued by the Inspector General of Prisons. They cover the mundane details of colonial life: the storage of zinc sheets, the procurement of winter blankets, and routing internal travel budgets. Yet these pages reveal the operational code of the empire. They show a state that controlled its captives through a dual machinery: the biological management of bodies and a rigid system of financial auditing. The first half of this machinery is biopolitics. This is the practice of reducing human life and health to quantified data points so the state can manage them at scale. The second half is the audit culture. The colonial administration tracked every penny spent on supplies, using standardized forms to ensure institutional transparency. These two priorities created a constant tension. An inmate had to be healthy enough to survive labor, but maintained at the lowest possible cost to the provincial budget. By cross-referencing these 5 documents, we can map out how the colonial state navigated that tension. The true architecture of colonial control was built entirely out of standardized paperwork. The Inspector General had to ensure that punishment did not result in the loss of a labor asset. Circular Docket Number 21 regulates this monitoring process. When prisoners were placed on a punitive, reduced diet during the rainy season, the administration required them to be weighed both at the start and the close of the term. By recording these changes in weight, the state used the prisoner's body as a biological metric, calculating the limits of physical endurance under starvation. Circular Number 11 applies this logic to environmental conditions, moving from diet to winter temperatures. To maintain the health of the prison population, the state mandated the use of heavy screens, or tot portas, on the specific side of the barracks facing the cold wind. This logistical choice was assigned to medical officers, who were tasked with overseeing these environmental protections. The medical officer's discretion is used here to define the minimum physical maintenance required for human survival within the jail. Through diet scales and weather screens, the prisoner was managed as a carefully calibrated biological data point. While bodies were managed in the barracks, the finances were managed from the colonial hill stations. The British officials who drafted these rules relied on local staff to run the facilities, a relationship often characterized by institutional distrust. Circular 33 established a system of financial auditing designed to mitigate that distrust. Paragraph 2 explicitly states that receipts from daragas, local Indian officials, would no longer be accepted as valid vouchers for payment. By excluding the daragas, the colonial administration centralized receipt verification, attempting to secure every transaction through a direct paper trail. Circular 31 expanded oversight to the physical supply chain. Point A required strict separation of imported European stores from local country stores. Point B mandated marks and seals be attested by 2 witnesses, creating redundancy to prevent fraud. This paper trail served to balance the provincial books and enforce imperial hierarchies by removing local officials from the chain of financial trust. Once established, these rules for individual bodies and vouchers were applied across the entire province. A budget form for 1887 shows how these micro-policies scaled into provincial infrastructure. Paragraph 2 orders a significant budget cut for moving prisoners. This was made possible by the approaching completion of massive central facilities at Benares and Fatehgarh. The state moved from a network of local lockups to a centralized system, routing thousands of inmates into these regional hubs. Managing thousands of inmates in a single location required the rigid dietary weighments and store auditing detailed in these circulars to function at scale. The completion of the central jails was the physical result of this quantified, audited colonial bureaucracy. The colonial state had to maintain a balance between the survival of its captives and the financial limits of the empire. That balance was maintained through total standardization. Weighing a prisoner to monitor physical decline and cross-examining a contractor's voucher are both mechanisms to assert control by eliminating variables. Colonial dominance was sustained by the threat of the musket and the treadmill. The medical officers and accountants filling out these forms were the day-to-day agents who made that dominance operational. This marriage of biometrics and bureaucratic auditing established a model for modern institutional incarceration. Ultimate historical power is quietly written, tracked, and enforced in the mundane margins of administrative circulars.